Why did you walk away?
I thought you deserved your moment.
My moment is standing right here.
The board wants you back as CEO.
They can wait. You can't. Ren, will you marry me?
Yes, 1,000 times yes.
If you have ever believed that money can shield a person from heartbreak, this story will change your mind. Stay with it until the end, because what happens on those courthouse steps will not make sense until you see everything that came before it. And if stories about love, loyalty, and second chances move you, subscribe now before we go back to where it all began. The rain had not stopped since morning, and neither had the reporters. Nathaniel Cross stood at the top of the courthouse steps with a dozen microphones jabbing toward his chin like spears. "Mr. Cross, how does it feel to be cleared after 6 months? Do you have a statement for the shareholders who turned on you? Will you be reclaiming your seat as CEO of Cross Dynamics?" Camera flashes cracked across the wet stone. Reporters shoved against each other, chasing the same sentence from the man the country had spent half a year calling a criminal. Nathaniel heard none of it. His eyes had locked onto a figure at the edge of the crowd, a woman in a plain gray coat, walking away without waiting for the verdict, without waiting for the cameras, without a glance over her shoulder. "Ren," he whispered. A reporter caught the shift in his face. "Mr. Cross, are you all right?" Another pushed a microphone closer. "Now that you have your name back, what's the first thing you're going to do?" For one unguarded second, the billionaire who had once run a company worth 11 figures looked like the loneliest man in the city. He stepped back from the microphones, shoved through the crowd, jacket already soaked, chasing a woman who had vanished into the rain. The only person who had believed him when the rest of the world had already convicted him was gone. To understand why he was running after her, and why she mattered more than the empire waiting to be handed back, we have to return to the last ordinary Monday of his old life, 6 months earlier. Mondays at Cross Dynamics always opened the same way. Staff hurried across marble floors. Assistants refilled coffee outside glass conference rooms. Investors gathered on the 40th floor with a skyline view that made every deal feel inevitable. Everything ran with the precision of a machine. Everything except Nathaniel. At 43, he had built one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. Magazines called him visionary. Rivals called him ruthless. He simply called himself occupied. He walked into the boardroom that morning in a charcoal suit without a single crease. His assistant, Priya, kept pace, scanning her tablet. Investor briefing at 9, acquisition call at 10, lunch with Senator Holloway at noon. CNBC wants 20 minutes this afternoon. Cancel the interview. They've already promoted the segment. Cancel it. He glanced at her. Anything else? 4 gala invitations. Send the usual donation. I don't have the hours to attend. She nodded without comment, because everyone who worked for Nathaniel knew the same thing about him. He wasn't cruel. He simply had no room left for anything that didn't move the company forward. When he entered the boardroom, 11 executives rose. Among them was Damon Reyes, Chief Financial Officer, and, Nathaniel would have said without hesitation, his closest friend. "You look like a man who hasn't slept," Damon said. "I'll sleep after retirement." "You've said that for 15 years. And meant it for 15 years. The meeting opened the way every Monday did. Revenue charts, expansion timelines, a Berlin acquisition, a new AI division that had investors practically vibrating. Everything looked flawless. It was, in fact, too flawless. Halfway through his presentation, the door slammed open. Federal agents poured in, badges raised. "Nobody move, hands where we can see them." An agent stepped forward, warrant in hand. "Nathaniel Cross? That's me. We're executing a federal warrant related to securities fraud, wire fraud, and corporate embezzlement." The words hung in the air like something translated from a language he didn't speak. "There has to be a mistake," he said. "We'll find out." Outside the glass walls, phones were already rising, already filming. Within minutes, footage of America's celebrated young founder, surrounded by federal agents, was spreading online. By noon, every financial channel carried the story. By evening, the headline had sharpened into something crueler. "Cross Dynamics, founder accused of stealing billions from his own investors." The stock dropped 40% before the market closed. That night, the board convened an emergency session. Nathaniel arrived expecting allies. He found 11 people who wouldn't meet his eyes. "Until the investigation concludes," the chairman said, "we're placing you on administrative leave. I built this company out of a rented storage unit, and the shareholders have to be protected. You actually believe I stole from my own investors? It isn't about belief. It's exactly about belief." Damon stared at the table. "I'm sorry, Nathaniel." Nathaniel looked around at people he had promoted and paid well for over a decade. Not one lifted their gaze. He picked up his notebook and walked out without raising his voice once. By the next morning, his phone had gone quiet. His golf partner canceled their standing game. 2 friends sent the same phrase, worded almost identically. "Need some distance until this clears up." His girlfriend, Sabrina, arrived that evening with 2 suitcases already packed. "Going somewhere?" he asked. "I think we need some space." She wouldn't look at him. "You don't believe me." "I don't know what to believe anymore." He asked one question before she reached the door. "If every newspaper printed my innocence tomorrow, would you still be leaving tonight?" She didn't answer. That was the answer. Investigators froze nearly everything he owned. His lawyers promised the truth would surface eventually, but the truth moved at the pace of a courtroom, and headlines moved at the speed of a notification. He visited his brother, Marcus, one gray afternoon. Marcus let him in, but kept glancing toward the kitchen, where his wife stood very still. "The kids have questions at school," Marcus said. "The neighbors won't stop talking." "I didn't do any of it." "I know." "Do you?" Marcus looked at the floor. "I want to." 4 words. They landed harder than every headline combined. 3 days later, a court official gave him 72 hours to vacate the mansion. He packed 2 suitcases into an aging pickup truck and drove without a destination, because for the first time in 20 years, nobody was expecting him anywhere. He stopped at a diner past the Wisconsin border. The waitress topped off his coffee unasked. "Rough week. You could say that. Coffee's on the house. Looked like you needed one small good thing today." It meant more to him than every extravagant gift anyone had given him, while his name was still worth something. Hours later, mountains rose on the horizon, and a weathered sign welcomed him to Elmswood Hollow, population just over 6,000, the kind of place national news had probably never once mentioned. He rented a cabin from a widower named Sal, who handed him a brass key without asking a question that mattered. "Running from something?" Sal asked anyway. "I think I'm looking for something." "Out here," Sal said. "That's usually the same thing." The next morning, he walked through town with no destination. Neighbors greeted each other by name. Children rode bicycles around the square. Nobody recognized his face. For the first time in months, he was simply a stranger, not a headline. If you are already invested in what happens next, take a second right now to subscribe, because this is where everything starts to change. Just after noon, dark clouds rolled over the ridge and rain came down hard. He ducked into the first open door he found, a narrow shop marked Hollow and Page Books. A brass bell rang overhead. The shop smelled of old paper and fresh coffee. Behind the counter, a woman glanced up and smiled, not because she recognized him, but simply because someone had walked in. "The rain caught you," she said. "It certainly did. There's coffee if you want to dry off." She poured a cup and slid it across. "I'm Ren. Nathaniel. No last names required in here. Everybody's just trying to stay dry." For the first time in longer than he could remember, someone had spoken to him without wanting anything from him at all. He stayed long after the storm passed. By the time he noticed the clock, it read past 4. "The rain stopped an hour ago," Ren said. "I noticed." "Then either that chair is comfortable or you're avoiding wherever you're supposed to be." "I'm not supposed to be anywhere." She studied him, curious rather than suspicious. "Stay until closing if you like. I've got a shelf that's been threatening collapse since Tuesday." He glanced at the tall wooden shelf leaning left. "That's a hazard. I call it historic. I'd call it a lawsuit. Do you have tools?" "You're serious?" "Very." For the next hour, he tightened brackets and reinforced the base while she sorted donation boxes nearby. "You've done this before," she said. "My first office had furniture I built myself." "What did you do there?" He hesitated. "Software." She didn't push. When he finished, the shelf didn't budge. "Better than it's been since my father bought it secondhand," she said, her smile fading at the edges. "He passed 3 years ago, left me the store and a stack of bills that could pass for modern art." "How bad?" "That's personal for a man who won't give me his last name." She sighed. "Bad enough I'm pretending not to worry about it." "That usually means it's very bad." "See? You really do understand business." He came back the next morning, and the one after that. He rearranged her cluttered front window, built a reading nook from mismatched chairs, and rewired her ancient register in 20 minutes after watching her fight it for 10. "You are definitely not an unemployed software salesman," she said, watching him type. "You're too comfortable telling people what to do. That means you were important somewhere." He stopped typing. She noticed and lowered her voice. "You don't have to tell me." He nodded, but the unspoken truth between them only grew heavier. The changes worked fast. A Saturday poetry reading drew 40 people. Hikers discovered the coffee corner and stayed 3 hours past their planned stop. Ren watched the store fill with noise it hadn't held in years. "You did this," she said. "We did this. I've been trying to save this place for 3 years. You walked in, insulted my window, and doubled my weekend sales in a month." She laughed, the first time without any restraint behind it, and he found himself watching her a beat too long. "What?" she asked. "Nothing. I was thinking." "That sounds dangerous." He stepped closer. The noise of the store seemed to fall away. Then a small boy raced between them, clutching a picture book. "Miss Wren, do dragons count as pets?" "Only if your mother says yes," she said, stepping back quickly. The moment broke, but it didn't disappear. That night, after the last customer left, Wren locked the door. "You've worked here every day this week. You haven't asked to be paid. I don't need the money." "For a man renting Sal's smallest cabin?" He looked away. Who are you, really? The truth pressed against his throat. Before he could decide whether to let it out, someone rapped on the glass. A neighbor waving about a frozen bakery register. The question waited. It did not go away. Word of the computer fellow spread fast. He fixed a bakery register, helped a florist build an order sheet, taught 2 teenagers to write a business plan, never for a cent. The trust of an entire town crept toward him quietly. A nod from the barber, a seat saved at the diner, a bag of apples left on Sal's porch. He had spent 2 decades surrounded by thousands of employees and never felt as connected to any of them as he now felt to a town that didn't know his last name. One evening, he sat on the bookstore floor, invoices spread around him. Wren sat beside him, their shoulders touching. If sales keep climbing, I might make the mortgage deadline. You will. Is that why you've been helping me? Because you don't like losing? At first, maybe. He turned to face her. Now, I'm not sure of anything, except that I don't want to leave. Her breath caught. He leaned in. The bell over the door rang, a courier with a package marked urgent, and the moment dissolved before it could finish forming. The next morning, Wren arrived early and found the package still by the register, and beside it, a glossy magazine left in with a donation box. She almost tossed it aside. Then she saw the face on the cover, shorter hair, a sharper suit, a colder expression, but unmistakable. The fall of Nathaniel Cross. Visionary or thief? She was still holding it when he walked in. Every trace of warmth left his face. Where did that come from? A donation box. She tapped the cover. Nathaniel Cross. I was going to tell you. When? Before or after the entire town found out on its own? I didn't come here to lie to anyone. I needed somewhere I could breathe. You're accused of stealing billions of dollars. I didn't do it. Then tell me exactly what happened. He paced away from the counter because for weeks he had avoided saying the words aloud, and now he couldn't run from them any longer. My CFO authorized fraudulent transfers through shell companies I'd never heard of. The paperwork carries my digital signature. I never approved a single one. Somebody built the fraud around me and let me carry it. Who do you suspect? Damon Reyes, my best friend. I gave him access to everything because I trusted him more than anyone. His voice cracked, and he turned away before she could see his face crumble. She came around the counter anyway. Nathaniel. I watched people I'd known for 15 years pretend they'd never known me. My board removed me before the investigation started. My girlfriend packed 2 suitcases before dinner. My own brother looked at me like I might be dangerous. So you disappeared first. I came here because I didn't want anyone to know my name. Now I'm afraid you do. His eyes were wet, and he didn't hide it. She reached for his hand. I know your name, but I also know the man who repaired my shelves, fixed a bakery register at midnight for nothing, and spent 3 hours teaching 2 teenagers to write a business plan. That doesn't prove I'm innocent. No, but it proves the newspapers don't know everything about you. She asked quietly, Do you believe me? Yes. His shoulders dropped as though he'd been carrying that question for 6 months. She wrapped her arms around him, and for once he let himself be held. Not as a billionaire, not as a defendant, but simply as a man who had finally found someone willing to stay. If this story has your attention, this is the right moment to hit subscribe, because the truth Nathaniel and Wren dig up next is about to put both of their lives in danger. That afternoon, they spread every document across a long table. The magazine, court filings, financial disclosures. Wren traced a line. These transfers all happened in the same 3-month window, and every article says you personally authorized them. But you were traveling on 2 of these exact dates. The article lists your speaking schedule. You were in Tokyo on the date this transfer left Chicago. Remote authorization is technically possible. Did you use it? No. He leaned closer, mind working faster than it had in weeks. Damon traveled with me to Tokyo. He flew home early, said his mother had taken ill. I never checked if that was true. Every transfer required 2 levels of sign-off, she said, sliding another document across. So, even if your signature was forged, someone else had to approve the second one. Damon. The name no longer sounded like a suspicion. It sounded like an answer, finally arriving. They worked past midnight until Nathaniel found a shell company registered in Delaware, its representative buried under deliberately unreadable paperwork. Can you trace it further? Not without the internal servers. There's one person who might still have access, my former assistant, Priya. Do you trust her? I used to trust everyone. He sent an encrypted message. An hour later, a reply. I've been waiting for you to reach out. Damon knows you're digging. Be careful. The lights flickered. Outside, a dark sedan sat across the street, headlights off, engine idling. By morning, the front window lay shattered across the floor. Black paint streaked the back wall. Liar. Among the glass, Nathaniel found a photograph. Wren, closing the store the night before, a red circle drawn around her face. On the back, stop helping Nathaniel Cross, his hand closed around it. This ends now. I'm leaving town. No, you're in danger because of me. And you disappearing fixes that. How, exactly? It proves whoever did this can still control you with fear. You have no idea what these people are capable of. Then tell me, because all I see is a broken window and you already running. You've spent 6 months pushing people away before they can leave you first, she said. Don't pretend this is only about protecting me. Before he could answer, smoke rose from behind the building. Wren ran for the back door. By the time he caught up, flames were climbing the storage shed where 3 years of her father's records were kept. My father's things are in there. She lunged toward the fire. He pulled her back hard as the roof cracked and half the shed collapsed. Neighbors arrived with buckets and extinguishers, and the volunteer fire department contained it before it spread. But the shed and everything in it was gone. Across the street, the sedan idled for 3 long seconds before pulling away. Nathaniel finally understood the message beneath the message. Damon wasn't only burying the investigation, he was proving that anyone standing near Nathaniel could be destroyed for it. They came here because of me, he said in the smoke-heavy alley. They came here because they're afraid of you. I care about you, he said, the words breaking loose before he could stop them. More than I care about clearing my name, more than I care about the company, more than I care about proving any of them wrong. Her eyes filled. Then don't leave me alone in this. I don't know how to keep you safe. You start by trusting me enough to let me choose for myself. He looked at the burned shed, then at the crushed photograph in his hand, and knew she was right. Wren had never once asked what his money could do for her. She had met him exhausted and nearly invisible to the world, and offered him coffee anyway. We take this to the police, he said, and then we finish what we started. The fire investigator confirmed accelerant had been used, and the whole town knew by nightfall it was no accident. Neighbors showed up without being asked. Plywood for the window, food from the bakery, hands to clear debris. Nathaniel stood in the middle of it, stunned by a loyalty he had never once been able to purchase. "Why are they doing this?" he asked. "Because this is their bookstore too," Wren said, "and because they know what you've done for this town, even without your name." That night, after the last neighbor left, Wren leaned against the locked door. "My father used to say this building survived 3 storms, 2 fires, and one truly regrettable renovation in the 70s. He forgot corporate sabotage." She almost smiled. "I meant what I said in the alley." "So did I," he said. "I don't know what my life looks like after this. I may never see the company again." "Then we'll need a great deal more coffee. Because when my father died, everyone told me to sell this place, that I was being sentimental. For a while, I believed them. Then you walked in and saw exactly what I'd stopped letting myself see." "That was business advice." "No, you saw me." She stepped closer. "And I see you." He kissed her slowly, like a man afraid the moment might vanish if he moved too fast. For one night, the danger circling them both felt very far away. By morning it was close again. Priya called from an unlisted number, voice barely above a whisper. "I found a hidden archive. Damon built duplicate authorization logs before every fraudulent transfer. They're locked behind internal security, but there's a physical backup. The old records facility outside Chicago. Officially, it closed 2 years ago. Unofficially, Damon moved the original server there. He knows I contacted you. Get out of the city. I'm trying to—" A knock sounded through the line. She inhaled sharply. "Someone's here." The call went dead. He tried again. Nothing. Wren was already reaching for her coat. "We're going to Chicago." "Absolutely not. We already had this argument, and I already won it. Someone else is in danger now. You don't even know what's waiting inside that building. Exactly why you shouldn't go alone." They drove through the night, and by dawn, the Chicago skyline rose out of gray clouds. A skyline Nathaniel had once looked down on from the 40th floor, now approached from a second-hand pickup, with a woman beside him who had seen him at his worst and stayed anyway. They met his attorney, Rachel Ford, in an empty parking structure. "Priya hasn't gone home," Rachel said. "Her car was found abandoned near the campus. I've got a federal investigator working this quietly, but we need hard proof before anyone moves on Damon." Nathaniel studied the facility layout in her folder. "There are 2 entrances. I designed the original access system. Security's been updated since. Then I'll update my approach." The old records facility sat in an abandoned industrial stretch near the river. Rachel stayed behind to coordinate while Nathaniel and Wren approached the rear entrance. He punched in an old code. The panel flashed red. He thought of Damon's habit of using dates that flattered his own ego, and entered the date Damon had joined the company. The light turned green. "Your best friend was predictable," Wren murmured. Inside, the air smelled of dust and cold metal. A door slammed somewhere behind them. They found the server room locked behind steel, footsteps closing in from above. Wren spotted a fire alarm and pulled it before he could object. Sirens tore through the building and the lock released. They sealed the door behind them. Rows of servers hummed in the dark. Wren found a notebook hidden beneath maintenance logs, handwritten codes in Damon's own hand. One opened a terminal. Folders bloomed across the screen. Duplicate logs, offshore accounts, forged signatures, and a folder labeled NC Exit Strategy, containing a timeline for removing Nathaniel from his own company and a list of payments to specific board members. He inserted a flash drive. "Copy everything." The pounding on the door became a full-body impact. "Open the door, Nathaniel." Damon, the transfer crept to 20%. "You always had to be the smartest man in the room," Damon shouted through the steel. "And you always needed people to believe you were. I made this company profitable while you gave speeches. I kept the board loyal while you flew around congratulating yourself. You stole from every one of them. I took what I'd earned. You framed me for it. You were becoming impossible to manage." The transfer reached 50%. Wren quietly began recording on her phone. "You never built loyalty," Damon said. "You built dependence. The moment you fell, everyone found someone new to depend on." "You're wrong about him," Wren called through the door. "He helped people when there was nothing in it for him. He saved a bookstore that wasn't even his to save." "And that makes him a good man?" "No. Choosing to become one does." The transfer hit 98% when the door burst inward. Damon shoved past the two federal agents behind him, grabbed Wren, and pressed a letter opener to her throat. "Give me the drive. Let her go first." Wren's eyes flicked to a fire extinguisher by the door. Nathaniel bent as though setting the drive down, and Wren drove her heel into Damon's foot. His grip loosened. Nathaniel lunged, struck his wrist, and the letter opener clattered away. Damon swung and caught his jaw before the agents forced him to the ground in handcuffs. "You have no idea what you're destroying," Damon shouted. Nathaniel wiped blood from his lip. "No, I finally know exactly what I'm saving." Within 3 weeks, federal prosecutors dropped every charge against Nathaniel Cross. Damon's accounts were frozen. 2 board members confessed to accepting payoffs, and Priya was found safe in a hotel outside the city. 2 months later, the court formally cleared his name in full. Which brings us back to the courthouse steps, in the rain, with a dozen microphones aimed at his face, and the one person who mattered walking away from all of it. He caught up to her beneath a streetlight, breathless, soaked through. "Why did you walk away?" "I thought you deserved your moment out there." "My moment is standing right here." She studied his face. "The board wants you back as CEO." "I told them no. I built that company because I believed success would make me impossible to abandon. I was wrong. Then I lost everything and found the one person who stayed anyway." He reached into his coat and produced a small wooden box holding a simple, unshowy ring. He dropped to one knee on the wet pavement while reporters gathered at a careful distance. "I used to believe worth was measured by how hard something was to obtain. You taught me the opposite. The things that matter most are freely given. Trust, kindness, a second chance nobody owed me. Wren Hollow, you believed in me with no proof at all. Will you marry me?" She laughed through tears already falling. "Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and when he stood, she wrapped her arms around him, and neither of them noticed the reporters closing in at all. 6 months later, Hollow and Page Books reopened after a full renovation, though Wren refused every attempt to modernize it into something it wasn't. "No marble," she warned. "A coffee machine that costs more than Sal's truck?" "Absolutely not." The shop kept its wooden shelves, its mismatched chairs, its slightly crooked sign. Nathaniel added only what mattered: a larger children's reading room, free classes for local business owners, and a hardship fund for shopkeepers. Quietly seeded with money he no longer cared to reclaim. Also founded the Cross Justice Foundation, offering free legal defense to people wrongly accused of financial crimes. Priya became its first director. Rachel joined its board. Sal insisted on the title Senior Advisor, though no one, including Sal, could say what exactly he advised. 1 year after the fire, Nathaniel and Wren married behind the bookstore under strings of white lights the whole town had helped hang. His brother, Marcus, found him before the ceremony. "I should have believed you from the start," Marcus said. "Yes," Nathaniel said, "you should have. Can you forgive me for it?" He watched Wren across the garden, laughing with a cluster of children. "I'm learning how." It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was an honest one, and for Nathaniel, honest was finally enough. That night, after the last guest went home, he and Wren locked the bookstore together and walked home beneath the soft glow of the square lamps. "Do you miss any of it?" she asked. "The jets, the penthouse, the whole country knowing your name?" "I miss the jet a little. I don't miss who I was when I had it." "And who are you now?" "A bookstore employee with strong, deeply misguided opinions about window displays." "You're still wrong about that window." "I'm your husband now. That has to count for something." She smiled, and up ahead, the lights of the home they now shared glowed warmly through the trees. Nathaniel had once believed that losing everything would be the worst thing that could happen to a man. He had been wrong. The worst thing was having everything, and never once learning who would still be standing beside you when it disappeared. He had lost the company, the fortune, and every person who had only ever loved what he was capable of giving them. But in a small mountain town, inside a bookstore he'd once called a fire hazard, he found something his billions had never managed to buy him. Someone who saw him clearly, someone who challenged him honestly, and someone who chose, again and again, to stay. If this story reminded you that the right person can find you even after you've lost everything, subscribe now for more stories about love, second chances, and the people who reach for our hand when there's nothing left in ours to offer. Sometimes the ones who truly belong in our lives aren't the ones cheering for us at the top. They're the ones who show up for us at the bottom and never once look away.